It's Royal Oaks. Royal Oaks, good morning this morning.
Good morning to you.
When will I be able to walk into a casino here in St. Louis and place a bet on your Los Angeles Dodgers?
It could be very soon. I don't know how smart the bet would be, but it could be soon. You know, betting on sports is a reality in America. It's $150 billion a year, but it's mostly illegal because a federal law banned it back in '92 after the Pete Rose deal. But the only places in the country currently where you may bet are Nevada. They grandfathered them in because they'd already legalized sports betting back in the 40s, plus 3 states, Delaware, Montana, Oregon. So to answer your question, if the Supreme Court flips this around, as a lot of people are guessing, the Supreme Court's going to say, you know, it's not within the federal province to tell the states whether they may legalize gambling or not. Then every state will decide on their own, and your state may go in favor of gambling, in which case it'll be legal.
So Chris Christie is suing the federal government for New Jersey to have the right to decide.
Exactly right. And what Chris Christie is saying is, look, federal government, fine that you don't like it. You do not have a right under the Constitution to tell the states whether they may legalize gambling or not. You know, we've got horse racing everywhere. Why not sports betting? And the argument is that let us make up our mind. There's nothing in the Constitution under the 10th Amendment or elsewhere that gives you that power. And folks are betting that maybe the Supreme Court will go with Chris Christie, because why would they agree to take the case up, for one thing, if they weren't going to flip the law around? If they wanted the current law to persist, they would just refuse to take it up. That's not a guarantee. Sometimes, a lot of times, they take up cases to talk about them and issue meaningful opinions. But I think most people are betting that betting will be legal wherever the states want it in the future.
I know a radio producer who may or may not work for the radio station, who has an app on his phone in which the app is basically the bookie. And he makes the bet and he puts it in his right. It's a bizarre system. I don't know if that's illegal or legal, but it's happening every day. And so it's almost ridiculous to think states shouldn't be able to sort of legalize and regulate sports betting.
And when you mention apps, of course, that raises a question a lot of people are wondering about. Let's say the Supreme Court does say, okay, each state may decide on betting. A lot of states do, because 18 states have joined the lawsuit filed by Chris Christie. Is sports betting going to spread immediately, extensively to online stuff? Where's the money going to go? Is it going to go to the leagues, tax collectors, maybe even the players? And, you know, the point you raise about folks having an app, that could be a clear signal that the Supreme Court is ready to go ahead and say gambling should be legalized, because the Supreme Court, as weird as this sounds, doesn't like to lead people around and force people to live a certain way. Yeah, there are rules. Sometimes they have to step in and say that this is unconstitutional. But in general, the Supreme Court likes to follow public trends, and this is definitely a public trend. You know, it is legalized gambling isn't here, but illegal gambling is everywhere. And so a lot of folks are thinking that it's very likely each state is going to have their own option.
Is the NFL taking a position on this case?
You know, the leagues, MLB, the NFL, they say that they're against legalized gambling. I think they're worried about the tainted gambling that's associated with organized crime and scandals and so on. But that opposition has softened over the last few years, and although technically they're on the federal government side in this particular lawsuit, people kind of can tell that they'd be okay with it. A huge amount of money is going to be coming in, and they would be one of the entities, the groups that would share in that tax bonanza that would flow in if gambling were legalized.
Well, it's also somewhat disingenuous since they're part owners of FanDuel and DraftKings, which is basically legalized gambling on fantasy sports.
Right. Yeah. No, everybody, I think, recognizes that there's a lot of hypocrisy going on around here. One of the interesting angles is if the Supreme Court does say, okay, gambling is legalized, how's that going to feed into a lot of other issues? Because we've got this sanctuary city issue, we've got immigration policy, drug legalization. A lot of people are saying, look, the federal government doesn't have a right to tell us what to do. That's what the sanctuary city people out in San Francisco say. They say, you know, we should be able to make up our own mind. And it gets back to this whole concept of jury nullification. If you're sitting on a jury and it's a marijuana case and you say to yourself, I don't believe in marijuana laws, but this guy obviously did it, but I'm going to vote not guilty to nullify the law. And so should the states be able to say, we don't care what you think, Mr. Federal Government, about sports betting. We think it should be legal. So that could spread to other areas as well beyond gambling.
Well, Royal Oaks, I'm very disappointed in you. The federal government should regulate everything I'm against, but leave free everything that I'm in favor of. Come on, Royal, what's going on there?
And I don't know what I was thinking.
They're going to hear this case today. Is that right?
Yeah, or exactly. Oral arguments, so we'll be able to read the tea leaves. Sometimes they clam up and don't really reveal where they're coming from, but often they really get into it. Some of the justices talk more than others. Clarence Thomas sort of famously doesn't like to ask questions. But probably at the end of the hearing today, we'll have a real good idea which way the Supreme Court is going to vote, and then the actual decision will come out in a month or two.
Interesting stuff. Royal, thanks for checking in.
You bet.
Royal Oaks, ABC News law correspondent.